Hi everybody, what's up? Welcome to Purab's Astro Shots. And me and Swanax, we are back together with our horoscope dissection series. Hi Swanax, how are you?
Hi, and good to be back. So today we have a very interesting and heavy chart, and
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be a first case study with relation to the topic that we have on hand today, which is marital dysfunction. So straight off the bat, you can see the first house where number 7 is written. That is the actual first house of the Kundali. You have Jupiter there, and you have Rahu there in a very, very close conjunction, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I think we have discussed this in another video that this is called the Guru Chandal Yoga, which is a very heavy term, but it is
Mm-hmm.
considered to be a very frivolous and a very controversial association between the ecliptic node, which is Rahu, and the heavy planet, which is the heavy and the happy planet, which is Jupiter. Now, I had also mentioned somewhere else that Jupiter in the first house, it is typically considered to be very, very good, right? But it's not always very
Mm-hmm.
good because you have to
Mm-hmm.
see the sign placement also, which is
Yeah.
in the number 7 house, which is in the sign of Libra. So, number 7 in the default chart is the sign of Libra. Wherever you see
Yeah.
number 7, it is equal to the sign of Libra, right? Which is a sign
Yeah.
of partnerships and associations and the other people and all of that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter rules your children, rules your partner. For a female, it rules the husband. That's what is usually understood. Um, of course, there are. I think a lot of emphasis should be given on Mars and all of that, but we'll talk about that later. Um,
Mm-hmm.
children is ruled by Jupiter. The education, the thinking,
Mm-hmm.
the inner conscious mind, right?
Yeah.
The
Because
actions, the
Jupiter is the
duty.
Karaka.
Hmm, hmm.
Correct. It's the Karaka of the second house, the fifth house, the ninth house, the 11th house.
Yes. Jupiter, I would give a lot of emphasis to the outlook and the dharmic thought process because it is ultimately ruling the ninth house. So if Jupiter is
Mm.
in the first house, it is actually considered very, very good. But
Yeah.
I have also seen that a Jupiter retrograde in the first house, I would consider that to be slightly better if there are no Mars aspects to it because it makes a person, sometimes it makes the person step back and think.
Mm.
But with a Jupiter in the first house, which is not retrograde
Mm-hmm.
and associated with malefics, I would consider that a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more riskier
Yeah.
because then the overconfidence is inflated. Person's always very enthusiastic or little too happy or little too positive when there is no reason to be that way, or the person is too headstrong with their opinions and there is no need to be that way.
Correct. Yeah.
These extreme views come into play, or the extreme antagonism where the person is like, no, this is right, there is nothing apart from this that is right.
Mm-hmm.
you know so I think being in the first house and being afflicted by malefics and being direct motion is a problematic Jupiter, I would say. So in this person's chart, you have Jupiter and Rahu conjunction. Let's ignore the Ne, which is called Neptune, but we're not going to consider that
Mm-hmm.
in our chart dissection right now, even though I do. But let's not
Mm-hmm.
consider that just for the ease of the mass. So
Yeah, I have a take about this Jupiter Rahu. There's a saying na, that Ketu Kujuvat and Rahu Shanivat.
correct.
Correct.
Mm,
So what I do is whenever I see a Guru Chandal Yoga and when this is happening in a very close degree. Now, Guru Chandal Yoga is very good in Kali Yuga because materialistically, like Jupiter also expands and Rahu also amplifies. So yeah, it gives expansion in through the aspects and the house placement. But conventionally, let us consider Rahu to be like a enhanced version of Shani, right? So
mm,
primarily, it will delay things and it will also inject the qualities of Shani into Jupiter, right? So
mm,
what I feel is that Rahu and Jupiter together consider this to be a debilitated Jupiter, right? Don't look at Venus, don't look at other planets, aspects of and something.
mm,
So when a debilitated Jupiter is acting in the Lagna, now it's a Libra, right? And Libra is all about relationship, sustaining relationship, and balancing out relationships, right?
mm,
So this person's nature would be like if you say something to this person about his or her well-being or his or her financial choices or something like that, that person is going to argue with you. That person is going to counter argue with you
mm,
and is going to question you like with what sense of judgment or with what relevance are you coming and advising me or talking to me, because Jupiter is the advisor, and Rahu connecting to this Jupiter is making the person distorted. The pure knowledge, the pure wisdom cannot
Correct.
be put across to that person,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
That's the problem with Guru Chandal Yoga, which is so close to that. And also Jupiter Rahu heading towards the second house, which is having a Scorpio Saturn. So, suspicion and
And they're very
doubt.
close. Correct. Rahu is
Yeah,
one
like that.
degrees and Jupiter is three, which is very, very close. It's sort of impacting the native's mind and the brain, because it's the
Correct.
first house, and the first house is the brain, the mind, the thought process,
Yeah,
right?
the
So
nature.
yeah, it's very, very heavy. The person's mind is constantly looking for ways to argue, to combat, to fight, to prove
Hmm.
her point. She's about
Yeah.
65 plus in age, but very, very
Mm-hmm.
headstrong.
And also, one thing I feel a bit annoying, we as astrologers should not judge planetary placements, but when a person has a Jupiter debilitated or a Rahu Jupiter conjunct, the person is always vocal about the work or the activity that he or she is doing. So if you ask that person very privately and very sensitively to get something like a room freshener or a packet of tissue paper, or let's say sanitary ware or something like that,
Mhm.
this person is going to enter a crowded room and he's going to shout out loud, he or she, that I've brought this for you.
Okay.
There
Okay.
you go, I've got this for you. So debilitated Jupiter means the person is trying to show his knowledge and buddhi
Correct.
by showing off the work, because Capricorn represents work. So
So
whenever you see Rahu Jupiter or
mhm,
debilitated
mhm.
Jupiter, these people are people who will not study but show a lot of books,
Correct. So
right?
you're trying to
And
compare Rahu with Saturn basically, and that's why you're saying it's in debilitation,
yeah,
right?
because
Mm.
Shani Guru conjunct also creates such
Correct.
thing. And Rahu is also like Rahu is an enhanced version of Shani, right? Because Rahu matures at the age of 42, even later than Shani. And both are co-ruling Aquarius, the 11th house. So similar
Mm.
characteristics, both have.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying that even somebody with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in the first house, in whatever
Yeah.
sign, it can create this sort of an effect. Correct?
Yes, it can. It can.
Okay.
In the case of Rahu and in the case of Shani, there is a slight difference of
Mm-hmm.
expression,
Mm-hmm.
where Saturn will give a bit of fear and anxiety before the person is vocal about his choices or whatever is running in his mind.
Mm.
So he will express it slowly. But in the case of Rahu and Jupiter, it's going to
Mm.
be very vocal and very loud, like I'm doing this, I'm studying this, I'm giving my exams. The highlight or the emphasis will be on the work that they're doing, as if they are the most knowledgeable and
Yeah.
wise people in the
Yeah.
world.
And
Yeah,
in
something
what
like that.
respect exactly, say, are you comparing the Rahu with as compared to the Saturn? Like, what is that one thing that is common between Saturn and
Mhm.
Rahu, which is what you're talking about?
Well, Saturn and Rahu, first of all, they're co-ruling the same house, 11th house.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see, wherever Saturn is placed, or wherever Saturn is conjoining with the planet, it creates a need to earn money, or it creates a need for sustenance. Because wherever Saturn is there, there is a crisis and the person works hard, and at the end he earns money only from that particular house or placement or conjunction, right? So let's say a person has Saturn Venus conjunct in the 12th house. This person is going to do something related to hospitals, or something related to care, for example tissue manufacturing or something like that. And through that he's going to earn money, right? Similarly, Rahu, wherever he is placed in whichever house, irrespective first, second, third, fourth, he will definitely earn money from that particular significance. So if it is in the first house, this person will be a personality development coach or a bodybuilder or something like that, and show or amplify that particular aspect and earn money from it. And if it is in the second house, then collect beautiful things like artistic things or jewelry or gemstones, and through that the innate desire would be to earn money from it. Similarly, ninth house Rahu, education, wisdom, knowledge, he is going to project that and earn money from it. So, because it is the 11th Lord, Saturn and Rahu, they have similar characteristics,
Mm.
right? So, this similarity in nature makes them yield similar results, but the expression is different. Saturn a bit restricted and a
Mm.
bit conscious and judgmental, Rahu a bit more open and it's like an outlaw. So, they say
Got it.
Rahu is a kingmaker, and also there is a saying that Saturn in the 10th house becomes a kingmaker. I think Saturn and Jupiter would make a person realize that, I have to make an income, or I have to make a name for myself through fair means. And Rahu and Jupiter, it's going to be like, whatever means, it doesn't matter. I have to become famous, I have to become successful, and I have to get the wealth. That is what I want at the end of the day. So, as I said, the expression, because Rahu itself is a separate planet, Saturn itself is a separate planet with similar qualities. So, the expression would be a bit different, but the end results, the impact over Jupiter would be, as I was trying to explain. So, it's
All right.
my sort of
Interpretation.
interpretation. People can go,
Hmm.
sort of
They can go in
haywire
another
on
direction.
this
Yeah.
new interpretation. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, one thing more I'd like to add here is that this since this person is such a difficult-minded person, she
Mhm.
actually has spent her entire life constantly fighting or being in a very conflicting sort of relationship with uh, most of the personal relationships she's had in her life. So there's always been conflict with her husband, with her children, with her own blood relatives, her brothers and her sisters and her mother and all of that. I think that it's scary because some of those conflicts were pretty bad and her nature was very, very fixed. I think, considering that the Kendras are lauded by cardinal signs, which is Libra and Capricorn and Aries
Capricorn and Cancer.
Cancer, you're supposed
Yeah.
to be a little bit more flexible or more action oriented. But in her case, I think the Rahu is very prominent in her first house, which is making her very rigid. Like if her mind gets fixed, it gets fixed. There is no two ways about it, and
And also Saturn,
mm,
because your ethics, your lineage, and your value system comes from the second house,
mm,
right?
mm,
And it's like the usul they say in Hindi, right?
mm,
हमारे usul and हमारे जो रिवाज है, रीति है, all these things are the second house.
yeah,
And Saturn is like the old rivaj and the old thought process, which is coming from one generation to the other generation, one generation. So
yeah, being
many
handed over.
people with,
Mm,
yeah, handed over. So many people with Saturn in the second house, I've seen this, that they're the people who are like, in our family, never has a girl been outside after 8 p.m. in the night, or in our family, no girl has worn a jeans. So that sort of a old school sort of dogmatic mind is given by Saturn in the second
mm,
house.
mm, mm.
And as far as the relationship issues that you were saying, and as we were discussing also once, that Ketu in Aries conjoined with Mars,
Yeah.
that's like Mars is the fighter, and Mars is in Aries, so it's like Firestorm or something like that.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
character
absolutely. And
in series that I'm watching. And
yeah,
Ketu, Ketu is like the butcher, something that cuts, someone who doesn't have any control. So a fighter who has got a lot of strength and a lot of swordsmanship abilities, but is uncontrolled. So this person can hurt himself also, and the person opposite to that person also.
yes, yes. And with
Yeah.
all respect to the native and the chart holder, and I have received the permission of the family to even put up this chart and discuss it. So there's no issue on that. But there have been some pretty stormy events in this native's chart. So let's just come back and conclude the first house. Also,
Yep.
I'd like to add that in the number seven house, which is in the first house, it is
Mhm.
ultimately Jupiter and Rahu are in the sign of Libra. Libra is a sign of partnerships and your marriage and your long-term relationships also.
Correct.
Okay, so there is something very controversial about the marital aspect here, as it's very evident for anybody when you see, especially for an astrologer when they see this chart.
Mhm.
This person's partner has been uh, has been somebody who was a trader in diamonds. You see the Rahu and the Jupiter impact are coming. So there has been luck in the Venusian department, which is diamonds
Mm.
and stones and jewelry and exquisite, really,
Mm.
creme de la creme sort of people have been associated with this person's husband. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is
And
shown by number seven and the loaded planet in number seven, which is the sign of Libra, which is the partnership. And
yeah.
this person has never broken up from the marriage. The marriage has lasted, but the happiness has not. It is
Even
because
though
of,
there's a Ketu Mars in the
yes.
seventh house.
Now, you look, as you rightly pointed out, let's just jump all the way to the seventh house. Now, where you see number one,
Mm,
Ketu is conjunct or it is next to Mars. Now, typically
mm,
the seventh house rules partnerships, but here we are having a very hot sign of Aries ruling the seventh house.
yeah.
And that shows there is always a lot of heat and agitation and anger related to the partner of this person.
Mm, mm,
And then you're having the person's Mars go there, Mangal. आप जब मांगलिक होते हो, this person is
mm.
very, very heavily Manglic. I mean, do you agree with me on this?
Yes, absolutely.
And that too next to
Mars is
Ketu.
very,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that means there's a past life carryover or many past life carryovers. One of the lifetime का जो एक carryover effect है ना, it's followed through in this lifetime. And Rahu and Ketu are basically your Kundalini energy also.
correct. Very right.
The
I
serpent
was
that
about to say
lies
this. Yeah,
rested in your base of your body,
yeah,
the base of your spine, shows that there was an extremely high sexuality related aspect in this
yeah.
person's perhaps past lives. Who knows?
And also a
And
lot of Kundalini Shakti, which is misfiring because
misused and misdirected.
misuse
Absolutely
and
correct.
misfiring. Because
Mm.
Ketu and Mangal are like the energy is scattered,
Scattered,
right?
and there is a hunger
Ketu
for more.
scatters it. Yeah.
Whenever you are hungry for too much, whether it is food or whatever it is,
Mm,
there is a disequilibrium in the system. The
yeah.
balance, there is less of a Saturn energy. And you see, Saturn is telling this native exactly that, yeah, that you need to control your excesses. How do I see that? Mars and Ketu is 6 houses away from Saturn,
Hmm. Wow.
right? Whenever any
Yeah.
planet is 6 houses away from Saturn, wherever your Saturn is, it shows there's a disequilibrium there. That is your karmic problem area that you're ignoring.
Hmm.
You have Mars, heat, action, energy, drive, anger, resentment, grudges, shame, disgust. Next to Ketu, past life, leftover, uncontrolled,
Yeah.
uninhibited. Six houses away from Saturn means that is a problem. Your husband will or your partner will come into your life as your biggest. That partner could have been you in some life,
Yeah.
and now you have to deal
And
with yourself.
and Ketu conjunct with different planets gives different types of OCDs for people. I'll
You are
explain that.
bang on. You are bang on
Yeah.
correct because this person also has OCD.
Yeah. It does gives OCD for people. Yeah.
So, yes, as we can see, Mars and Ketu is 6 houses away from Saturn. So, I think that is the biggest karmic hindrance that she needs to basically work on. And her partner or her partnerships, essentially her main long term partner, which is her husband, will come to her in the form of her old avatar, what she perhaps was in a couple of lifetimes previous to this.
Hmm. Hmm.
What her soul has been
Yeah.
used to doing or being, her husband will now come in that form and trigger that aspect in her. And she will be essentially seeing what she once was, living with whom she once was in another lifetime. And she has to deal with
Right.
that now. Whenever you see a seventh house, basically, just remember one thing: the people who come to you and they trigger you are who you once upon a time were, was, and in perhaps, not in a very good mode. And now they are here to kind of challenge you and say, okay, look, deal with your old self, especially your
Wow.
long term partnerships, especially your long term partnerships.
I think you're correct about it because I have seen this thing manifesting in certain people's married life, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Where one partner is restrictive about the other partner about the choices and the choice of clothes, or let's say the choice of you know uh, work and whatever, right? So I
Hmm.
think when somebody is restricting you, that means you have restricted somebody else in some other lifetime, right? So
Hmm.
you're very correct. The seventh house is like the manifestation of a small version of you in some lifetime, which is like a challenge. Now you face it and see how it feels.
Yes. And whenever you're assessing any house, even if it's an empty house, just think of what is the exaltation planet and what is the
Mm.
debilitation planet. In the seventh house, the exaltation planet is Saturn. Why is it
Yeah.
exalted there? shows you've got to actually face exaltation. Does
Teach
not
the
mean always
lesson.
happy and good, and it doesn't always mean that. It just shows that there's a lot of power and
A lot of
influence.
karmic expression coming through the seventh house. That's
Correct.
why Saturn chose to get exalted in the seventh house.
Exaltation simply means an influence, and debilitation also
Yeah,
means an influence. It's just that.
yeah.
Okay. So you're having two planets. You're having Mars there, and you're having Ketu there. That too in the sign of Mars itself, sitting in the
Mm,
house of Libra, original Libra, where Saturn is
mm,
exalted. It is like it is a very unhappy state. The marriage or the people who come into her life will
mm-hmm.
perhaps result in a very unhappy outcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as we were saying, that uh, Ketu conjunct with planet thus gives OCD,
Yes.
and a planet, when it is unafflicted by Ketu, it is expressing and manifesting its energy without any hindrance or cutoff. But when Ketu is coming, now Ketu is something which is unnatural, and which is not controlled, which is not under the control of anything, because Ketu is the flag which shows that I will break through everything and I'll try to rule here, right? So here, anger, Mars represents the temperament and the anger and the energy, and Ketu represents, let's say, obsessiveness or exaggeration of certain things in a wild or unnatural manner. So the temperament of the person, the expression of the person towards the life partner, or
Yeah, yeah.
towards the business partner, or towards the seventh house, is going to be very rash, very
Very.
angry, very
Mm.
hot tempered, erratic, and
Very unforgiving
like that,
also. Very unforgiving.
unforgiving and cutting off. It's like hurting. That's the right
Yeah.
word. Ketu and
Hurting.
Mars are surgery prone. They cut because both of them give surgeries, Ketu and Mars. So it'll be very cutting in nature,
Cutting in nature. And I think these tendencies are
physically
also,
also
yes, yes. And
hurting.
I think this also shows past life heaviness regarding disrespect and misuse of your partnerships. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
example, if you're in a partnership and you seal the deal and then you go out and you have other forms of partnerships and then you cheat on your partner and then, or you may have physical fights with your partner when, the situation may not really demand it. Mars Ketu shows
Mm-hmm.
that too in the sign of Aries.
Yeah.
Also
And
not always, but it shows trading in knives,
yeah,
trading
yeah,
in
yeah,
weapons,
absolutely.
right?
Ketu shows knives and swords and all the samurai swords and everything. Those are Ketu.
Yeah, and very interestingly, the house also their house also once upon a time had swords on the wall put up.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
And there was also, from what I was told by the family, there was all. I mean, there have been such enormous fights, like enormous vastu dosh. Whenever you have a Libra ascendant, you're having number 10 in the fourth house, right? Where you see number 10, that's the
Mm.
fourth house. So there is, even if there's no planet, there is a vastu issue there. The house will be big. It'll be in a very
Mm.
nice, very status oriented
Structured
land.
and status oriented because
Correct.
Capricorn. The
Yeah.
locality of the house must be very prominent,
Correct.
uh, right? And high standard and
Very.
up class, something
Very,
like that.
and a lot of celebrities also nearby the native and all
Yeah.
that. But there's a very heavy Vastu dosh here. Why? Because Saturn is going all the way to Scorpio.
Mm. And I'll
Not
share a
that
secret about
not that it's a
Capricorn.
bad thing, but still, yeah, please go on.
Yeah, I'll share a secret about Capricorn. Capricorn is the 10th house energy. All right. And Capricorn chose to come in the 10th house because it shows that we have a duty and we have a responsibility towards something in life,
Hmm.
and mostly towards our professional success and growth and career and status. Because if you're not achieving anything in life, then nobody is going to respect us, and we can't even earn our daily bread and butter if you're not doing karma. That's the 10th house, right? Now, I read this somewhere. I would not quote the book because because of personal reasons. But what it means that having Capricorn somewhere or having planets in Capricorn shows that there is a curse of God. So what it shows is that wherever you've got Capricorn rising in a particular house of your chart, or if you have planets in Capricorn, that means that there you're carrying a curse of not fulfilling your duty or your karma towards something or someone. Okay, so if let's say you've got Venus in Capricorn, that means you have not done your duty towards your wife or the women in your previous lifetimes, if this is the chart of a male.
You're talking
And
about the 10th
if
house or the sign of Capricorn? Like any planet in the
sign
10th
of
house?
Capricorn,
Okay. Okay.
the sign of Capricorn, primarily Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn.
Mm.
So any planet placed in Capricorn or Capricorn falling in any particular house of your chart, definitely there is a lot of unfulfilled karma, and because of which God has cursed and sent you, or the higher energies have sent you, that now go fulfill this pending karma and then come back,
Mm.
like that.
I think I also what you're saying, I'm going to extend it to the 10th house also. Because the 10th
Hmm.
house also has shown me a lot of problems with Capricorn related aspects or the duty related aspect. Like just the 10th
Hmm.
house, wahan pe if you can see, I mean, we're jumping a lot here, but if you see in the 10th
Hmm.
house, you have the number 4, which is Cancer. And
Hmm.
Cancer doesn't like to be shown publicly,
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
But then you're
Hmm.
having Venus there, planet of love, emotion. That means there has been a problem in this person's life or soul path where there has been
Hmm.
insult of the partner and in publicly. And this
Publicly.
native or this chart holder does has lived her life insulting or degrading her husband all her life. So um,
Hmm.
I mean, at least publicly, and the fights have been pretty massive where everybody has gotten involved. So I remember being told all of that by the family, when I was working
Hmm.
on
Hmm. Hmm.
her chart and all of that. So I think
So
what you're saying,
so with an
number 10
example,
and 10th house. Yeah.
yeah.
Both
Yeah,
are.
and so with an example, if I have to quote so that people can understand it better, have you read in the the Amar Chitra Kathas and the stories
Mm-hmm.
that there used to be a devata, and this devata had become very wrong, and then suddenly he was cursed to become a tree, or he was cursed to become an animal, and then for years and years, for centuries, he was living that curse, and then suddenly God came in some way, either killed him or hurt him or dissected him in some way,
Mm-hmm.
and then his curse got mitigated after his death or after a transformation in his life.
Mm.
Have you heard of stories like
No,
this?
I have, but if we are considering the astrological aspect to that, we are basically seeing
Yeah.
that the curse is of being forgotten, being ignored, and the fact that you're just there, you're not able to get moksha, you're not able to leave the planet.
Yeah, and having been given that facilities and given that power, you didn't use it for the well-being
Mm.
of either yourself or the people who were dependent upon you. So now you go and feel the lack of that particular area of your life, suffer, and then finally you'll be mitigated. So good thing about Capricorn is that any planet in Capricorn, initially you're going to feel the lack of it and suffer, or the 10th house, we can extend to that also, but later you're going to get it back. Later you're going to win
Wow.
over it at the end,
Win over it
right?
with an attitude change. I think a lot of people, they go through a lot of trauma, they go through a lot of problems, but they
Hmm.
don't, after coming through it, also the attitude remains the same. And I think that is where the soul just keeps reincarnating into body after body with the same problems.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And I think Capricorn energy is very heavy, but you need to have a very strong, mature mind to deal with that kind of energy. Correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
So now let's go to the second house since we've scattered all over.
Yeah.
Second house is ruled by Scorpio, where you see number 8.
Yeah.
And you see Saturn there in 25 degrees of Scorpio. Now, it's a very advanced degree of Saturn.
Hmm.
You can even call it the Atma Karka.
Okay.
I want to know your take.
Okay. Now there is a reason that this person specifically has Saturn as the Atma Karaka. Correct.
Mm.
Because the Atma Karaka keeps changing, right? Somebody can have Mars, somebody can have Venus, somebody can have Sun, Mercury, Moon, Jupiter. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So when Saturn has become the Atma Karaka in this chart, that means Saturn related things or Saturn related issues were a very important reason for this soul to incarnate and go through, right? So what is Saturn? Saturn is fulfilling your duties, fulfilling your responsibilities, right? And not exploiting the power and authorities, right? And sustaining people, or sustaining or taking care of the people who are below you, the because you have been given a position or an authority based on trust and credibility. So fulfilling that is also Saturn's purview, right? Now all these areas of life, this person has done something, right, because of which Saturn chose to be in Scorpio and become the Atmakaraka.
Mm.
Saturn could have been the Atmakaraka in Libra also. It could have been the Atmakaraka in Capricorn also. But Saturn in Scorpio is a very intense manifestation, because Scorpio itself is the eighth house of Kalpurush, which itself is sort of a cursed house. It's a negative house, right? So Saturn being the Atmakaraka is going in Scorpio, number one. Second thing, Scorpio Saturn does give a lot of psychological complication, because Moon gets debilitated in Scorpio.
Mm.
You understand
Mm.
what I'm
Mm.
saying? So yeah, this person has to go through a lot. Having Saturn as Atma Karaka, have to right every wrong that the person has done in lifetimes. Suffer a lot, because Saturn gives sorrow and grief. Let's say a person has Venus as an Atma Karaka, then the primary purpose of the soul is to come and fulfill the desires of Venus, that is enjoying wealth and luxuries and relationship and happiness and things like that.
So just
Get
by
what I'm saying?
looking at Saturn in 25 degrees in the sign of Scorpio in second
Mm.
house, how would you what makes you say that this person has done a lot of negative work? I mean, if we just ignore all of the planets, what makes you say this person has a lot of uh, catching up to do in terms of
Okay.
duty? Mm.
First of all, the Rashi shows the manifestation or the nature of Saturn, like how Saturn is functioning here. Correct?
Mm.
Now Saturn in Scorpio is very intense, right?
Mhm.
And Saturn in Scorpio, makes a person very afraid of transformation, and very has trust problems,
Lot
right?
of trust problems, correct. Mm.
And Saturn in Scorpio gives insecurities about death,
Lot of
correct?
paranoia.
Fears about
Yes.
paranoia and yeah, paranoia and death. And Saturn in Scorpio does give suicidal tendencies as well,
Mhm.
right? And also makes you accident prone if Saturn is your Lagna Lord or your fourth Lord. Because Lagna Lord in Scorpio, you are going through transformation. Fourth Lord, your vehicles is going through transformation. So that's a yoke for car accidents or accident involvement, right? So Saturn in Scorpio is not a very happy position, because Saturn gets debilitated in a Martian sign Aries, and Scorpio is also ruled by Mars, and it's a water element, and Saturn is Vayu Tattva. Now, when you put Vayu inside water, it doesn't feel comfortable. It tries to come out, na? The bubble tries to come out of so much of water.
Mm.
So it's like a person is stuck in this life, given a lot of fear and insecurities and
Mm.
phobias, and
Mm.
a lot of suspicion and transformative situations. Saturn in Scorpio in the eighth is like the person has to protect himself from getting killed or murdered,
Mm. Mm.
or the karma of the person is to remain in hiding,
This is
right?
Saturn retrograde too.
Yeah, and if this Saturn is retrograde, it's like 4 times, 5 times more powerful Saturn.
So this
So
person has actually complained that a lot of people have done black magic or made psychic attacks and all of that too. I'm not sure how relevant that is because looking at from an
suspicion of
object, lot
transformation.
of I would say more from a more pragmatic angle. There's a lot of paranoia in her, and I mean everybody has sort of told her to just relax a little bit because
Yeah,
so that paranoia is there. She's not mentally unwell, but I mean she's functioning very wonderfully, but she
yeah.
has a deep seated fear of being poisoned or having something
Mm,
mixed in her food, and in that regard I would say it's a little over
mm,
it's a little over thinking that's gone all the way extreme because she even locks her fridge door or she doesn't let
mm.
anybody come to the kitchen. She's very paranoid about food related issues.
Because second house is food and eating, na?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So
And
now you see how this Atmakaraka is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go on.
no, I mean, and there's always two of each thing in their house. So her husband has to eat in another dish or has to order from outside, or, he
Mm,
has to have another fridge in the house just for the husband. She doesn't allow, these minor issues are
mm,
there where there's extreme paranoia and fear that somebody will harm us. So about the suicidal tendencies, I would say no. I would say the opposite
mm.
of that, the fear of death is very, very prevalent in her.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now that is where the Atmakaraka, and secondly the the placement of the Atmakarka, like how well placed or placed bad, that matters, because here Scorpio Saturn, the entire focus of the soul is to save the soul from transformation or poisoning, or from accident, or there is always a suspicion factor, a phobia that something is going to happen to her, somebody is going to harm her. So you see, now if this Saturn was, let's say, placed in the 4000 Taurus, and it became the Atmakaraka, then the person's desire would be to have a lot of property, have a lot of houses, create a lot of conveyances and assets, because the focus is going on the fourth house. But here it is in the second house. So yeah, definitely the person has a lot of desire for wealth creation, and also creating a name and reputation, a brand for herself in the family. But the flip side, because it is in Scorpio, so the added element of Scorpio, which is fear and anxiety and
Hmm.
transformative situation and suspicion and occult and things of unknown nature, these are the things which are giving her phobia. And throughout her life, I think she is fighting an invisible battle
Correct. Invisible
for no
battle would
for
be
no
correct.
purpose.
Very wonderfully put. Do you think that the soul has a fear of poisoning because of the degree and the retrogression of the Atmakaraka, or the high degree of the Atmakaraka and the retrogression?
Fear of poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Look,
Or has the
when
soul
you
done it?
see,
Has the soul experienced it in the past life, or has the soul inflicted it on somebody else in the past life? Because you see, we cannot ignore the fact that Saturn is also putting a seventh aspect or a seventh drishti to the eighth house.
yeah,
Correct?
look, if you want to understand the person internally, like what's going through internally with the eighth house, look at the moon chart. Mars and Ketu are in the eighth house from moon. It shows that the person has ended the previous life in bloodshed, in warfare, because it's a Ketu Mars in the eighth house from moon. So internally, this person knows,
Mm.
and Ketu in the eighth house, along with Mars, it elevates the intuition, or it elevates the past life tendency of the person in regards to death and transformation, because it's in the eighth house, Ketu Mars, right? So from the moon chart, Ketu Mars being placed in the eighth house in Aries shows that this person is definitely, come across or ended or bidden goodbye, bid farewell to the previous life in a very warfare or transformative sort of situation. So that's why that tendency is also there, because Mars ultimately is the soldier who is always anticipating that there will be an attack from somewhere and I have to defend, right? So now it is happening in the eighth house of the moon chart. So internally, the person is thinking that somebody is going to attack me and try to kill me, and I have to defend. I have to defend, like that. And
And
then
has
there's a
this
Ketu.
person been attacked, or has this person attacked? How do you differentiate between the two?
I think because it is in Aries, right? So the chances are more that the person is attacked, and that is why Scorpio Saturn, it is giving her the fear that I am going to get attacked.
And it is third from the moon, means the
Yeah,
actual
it is third
effort.
from Moon.
Mm.
Efforts in the house of efforts. So she's putting efforts also,
Means the efforts are restricted and constrained in this life, because the fact is that she is suffering from Parkinson's also.
but nobody is attacking her.
Nobody's attacking her. Because Saturn is 3 houses away from the moon.
Mm-hmm.
3 houses. Now, just for the audience, we're talking about the moon chart where we're making number six the first house. This is just a little
Yeah,
deviation, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if you see, Saturn is 3 houses away from the moon. That inhibits, that stops the mind. It tells you that, listen, you have really messed up
Mm,
with your hands. You've done something wrong with your hands and your
mm,
and your willpower and your
mm,
energy
mm.
in your past lifetimes, and we are going to stop you in this department.
Yeah,
So there is 3 houses away from the moon. You have Saturn retrograde in um, Scorpio.
yeah,
That means
Scorpio.
that means there's a misuse of power energy, misuse of the power
Yeah,
of hands
yeah,
with an equipment. Saturn could be an iron equipment or a steel equipment or a lead equipment.
yeah,
Saturn, Loha.
yeah.
Okay, and then you have 8 houses
Ketu and Mars
away.
in the eighth house.
Correct, 8 houses away, which is the house of transformation, death, challenges, anger. Eighth
Mm.
house away, your Mars and Ketu, both fiery planets. That's not very nice. That shows uh
And Ketu
hurting.
always in the
Yeah.
eighth house
Mm.
from the moon chart or the Lagna chart shows that your Your entry point into this life is the exit through transformation in the past life.
Mars and Ketu, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm talking about the eighth house, Ketu and Mars in the eighth house from moon in the moon chart,
Mm.
or conventionally in the chart of any human being who
Mm-hmm.
has got a Ketu in the eighth house
Mm-hmm.
conjunct with planets shows that the situation of closure of the past life was very transformative. It had an element of the eighth,
Mm. That a very violent one, I would say.
violent and transformative one.
Like there was some equipment used, there was some uh,
Hmm.
something used. Now, you know,
Yeah.
we obviously cannot be so
Fathom.
exact in act
Yeah.
in because we are just human beings at the end of the day, and we'd be lying to ourselves if we say that we have it all right. Absolutely not. So with due respect to the chart holder, definitely I think a lot of fear and paranoia of being hurt and injured is there because of perhaps having inflicted onto somebody else, or
Yeah.
somebody else could have inflicted it on the native. That's a bit of a
Yeah.
question mark there. Because you see, Saturn is aspecting from the Lagna chart, Saturn is aspecting the
Eighth
eighth
house.
house, where number two
Yeah.
is written, and two typically is rules the food or what you consume.
Taurus. Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
and then that means there is a death related issue regarding food or regarding a
Yeah.
utensil, because number two also rules utensils.
Hmm.
Okay, and then you see the lord of that goes into the 10th house in the sign of Cancer. Cancer
Yeah.
rules food. So there could have been a transformative death like situation regarding uh, being poisoned in a steel plate.
Yeah. Or vice versa,
Hmm.
having the intent or having hurt someone,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because look, if somebody is suffering from a fear or phobia, and if somebody is constantly getting affected mentally, emotionally by it, that means that the person has done some karma
Hmm.
and in a negative way, because of which it is manifesting in this life as a fear. Because if the person was innocent, and then no fear would come, right? Rather, there would be an exalted Mars which will help the person to overcome that fear in this life.
Hmm. Correct,
But
correct.
because the person has exercised his authority or exercised his power in a wrong way, that's why there is a Saturn in the second house, not the Sun, and it is aspecting the
Yeah.
eighth, giving fear about death, and fear about death through Taurus element, which is either this person can also have this phobia that what if my life partner gives me diamonds, small diamonds with water, I'm going to die.
Okay. Yeah, they could have all these fears.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah, I mean, what you said is absolutely right. So, also just to because see Mars, if you look at Mars, it's actually quite powerful in Aries. It's its own Rashi.
Mm.
And it's just that the Mars power has been taken away or absorbed by Ketu.
Yeah.
Now imagine Mars just by itself; it would be quite powerful.
Mm.
But you're having Mars gives us a sign. There's a sense of helplessness there. I can't do anything.
I've seen people with Ketu Mars conjunction, they get unconscious, they faint when they see blood. Yeah, but I've seen this
Yeah,
with people,
yeah.
hereditary wise also. I've seen a classic case where the father and the daughter, they have the same problem. If there is a sudden bike or a accident sort of situation, they just freeze there. They don't have even the energy to use Mars to step aside and avoid accident. And this happens more when Saturn aspects this Mars and Ketu. But yeah, Ketu Mars conjunction, there is a problem with blood clotting. There is a problem with bloodshed. People get unconscious, or whenever somebody takes blood through a syringe or something, that also makes the person faint. So I've seen this happening.
Yes, yes. And this person has had a lot of surgeries, a lot of very difficult health problems that she's overcome, and she's still in that zone. She has a surgery
Hmm.
this year. She's got one next year. It's a very difficult chart health wise also. The next thing I'd like to bring up here is the fifth house.
Mm-hmm.
You have Aquarius there, correct? Now,
Mm-hmm.
she has been a very difficult mother. There has been a lot of discrimination done between the way she's brought up her son versus the way she brought up her daughter. And the both the children are grown up now. They do support the mother very, very wonderfully. They do their duty. So you see, she still, however difficult her rapport was with the kids, because 11th sign is there, then the Kumbh Rashi, the Mool Trikon of Saturn, or you know, the luck of the the benefit derived from the sign of Capricorn or sign number 10,
Mm-hmm.
the native is
Mm-hmm.
still benefiting from her son and her daughter,
Okay.
and she gets the support, financial, emotional, everything wise. So
Mm-hmm.
you see a lot of that going in the second house in the sign of Scorpio. So Saturn is there, right? It shows that
Mm-hmm.
children will be there, they will be present, and they will also have resources.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Okay.
children do have resources, whether it is psychological resources, emotional resources, or financial resources. The resources are there. Now, how the relationship is transformative in nature.
Mm.
Children are not
Obviously,
happy with her
it's a lot
behavior,
of
and
Scorpio.
there's a lot of pain and transformation. Yet the duty is done, yet the benefits are received.
Yeah.
So that
And
is a
also
very
the
interesting
sixth
dynamic.
lord.
Mm.
Yeah, because the sixth lord is the wealth of the child, the first child, let's say.
Mm.
Because the fifth house is the first child, and the sixth house is the money or the wealth of the first child. Now that is going to the Lagna and conjunct with Rahu, which is Jupiter.
Mm.
So the wealth or the energy or the financial support of the first child or the savings of the first child is going to the Lagna of this person. So Lagna means health and maintenance of vitality. So obviously the person is gonna, that is the child, is gonna spend to take care of the Lagna, take care of the health
Correct.
of this native. Is it that way?
That is absolutely correct, because most of the funds and most of their children's exertion is done because of trying to treat the mother.
Okay, so that's there, and because the second house of the child is the sixth house of the mother, so Jupiter is managing it, right? Sixth lord in the first house. Jupiter is benefic. It will definitely take care, right?
Yeah, because of number 12. Okay, got it, got it. Yes.
Yeah.
And what made you say that the children are spending on the health of the mother? Can you just repeat that part again?
Yeah, because the second house of the child is Jupiter,
When number 12
and
is
it's a
written.
12, and it's a benefic sign there, Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the sign itself is philanthropic sign, Pisces, and the lord of this Pisces is going to the Lagna of the mother, and Jupiter in the Lagna will protect the Lagna, right? It's a benefic planet. So that is why the sixth lord, being the wealth and financial resources of the child or the children, is going to the Lagna of the mother to sustain the health and vitality of the mother.
Correct.
That is expenses.
And
And
health and
because it's
vitality
eighth
being the
away,
first house. Mm.
health and vitality being the first house, and because it's sixth away, so transformative expenses. Suddenly, there is an expense, and then
Yes, yes, yes,
they are
absolutely. Wonderfully
pouring,
put.
pouring and pumping in funds.
So remember,
Yeah.
one rule or one thing is that whenever any house is ruled by a retrograde planet,
Mm-hmm.
even if it is Saturn, that thing it will happen.
Yeah.
They could,
And
they cannot be a denial.
correct, correct. And also because the drishti of Jupiter is falling in the fifth, so it shows that the children will uphold the values and the Jupiterian aspect, that is caring and becoming a benefic. So whenever a person has Jupiter in the Lagna, the fifth and ninth house are anyhow sorted. Fifth aspect and ninth of aspect of the Jupiter is falling in the fifth house and ninth house. So the luck and the divine blessings is automatically coming. So jitna bhi, the chart is bad. There's a lot of negative planets, but one Jupiter in the Lagna aspecting the fifth house of Purva Punya and children and the ninth house of divine blessings and support will definitely give you help whenever you will require. You're protected when you have a
Correct.
Jupiter in the first, fifth, or ninth.
Very correct. So let's go to the sixth house now, where number 12 is written. Now, whenever you see the sixth house, you clearly have to see the liabilities of this person, what the
Mm-hmm.
prarabdha karma is, what is the problem areas of the person. So you see, Pisces is ruling that. Jupiter is 8 houses away from the sixth house. That means this person
Mm-hmm.
has not had a very um, sane relationship with the mentor figures in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Has had a very insulting relation. Has insulted the people who have been mentors in this person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is
Okay.
one reason why this person has struggled with getting attached to the brothers, the sisters, having a lot of problems with, the daughter, the son, the grandchildren also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at this age, so she's about 70, I think, and at this age, she still physically abuses her kids
Oh,
who
okay.
are in their mid 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's just quickly wrap this chart up. You see Sun and Mercury sitting in the 11th house, which in the sign of Leo. This
Mm-hmm.
person may have struggled a lot in the family life, but person has a wonderful luck of friends and network circles.
Of society and high status people, right?
Yes,
Because it's a
absolutely.
Leo sun, royalty.
In fact, her friends and associates are from her school days, and they are they have very royal lives themselves. So
Okay.
even her surroundings, even the 11th house also rules her surroundings in a way. Your larger network group and your network circles. There is her house is situated around the celebrity life. All around her, you
Mm-hmm.
have like actors and actresses and people who cater to them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large network circle of very prominent people around this person, and also the friendships are very royal, and the friendships are very good. So I would say a lot of loyalty in the friendship department. Let's move to
Yeah,
the 12th house now, just to wrap it up, and I think I'd like you to take over the 12th house.
correct. So now the 12th house is very important for this person. Why? Because the moon is going to the 12th house, right?
Yeah.
Now, the moon is placed in the sign of Virgo, right? And Virgo controls the energy of the 6,000 Kalpurus chart in the chart of the Aries ascendant, universal man. Now, Virgo people are very detail oriented. They are very fault finding, all right, and they want perfection in things, and they also are critics, fault finding people who will always discuss about problem, who will always identify problem, and who will always find faults in
Mm,
everything,
correct.
right? Now, this Virgo moon is going to the 12th house of the subconscious mind, right? Now, the subconscious mind has a huge say in the psychological build-up of the person, right? Because whatever you feel or whatever you experience subconsciously, right, that is what is manifesting outside consciously later, right? So the intuition or the thoughts or the type of the mindset, it is first built in the 12th house, the subconscious mind, and then it is getting transferred into the lagna, right? Because the lagna is next to the 12th house. It's the gain of the 12th house, right? Now Virgo being in the 12th is definitely a feeling this person has that I am alone in this life
Correct.
and I can
Okay.
trust nobody because the moon is in the 12th house. Now 12th house is where your emotions very hidden. Your emotions are somewhere where you're not able to express it to people. 12th house moon is one dictum that a person cannot express the emotional problem and the state to the person outside.
Mm, mm,
Correct.
mm,
And if you see the 12th Lord is going to the 11th house. All right. So I think the only zone or the only set of people to whom this person will convey at least a bit of problems and share her personal space is with her network circle, the 11th house,
mm.
but not in very detail because the 12th lord is conjunct with sun and sun represents the ego. So this person would definitely feel that if I'm sharing my subconscious mind with somebody or if I'm sharing my personal psychological problems with somebody, then they're going to look at me in a very sort of undermining way, and I
Correct.
don't want that to happen because a Leo sun will never let uh,
Correct.
the person to become undermined or belittled because
Yeah,
sun is
there is
royalty.
absolutely
Yeah,
right, because there's a narcissistic tendency in this person. In fact,
superiority complex.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, when I talk to her, I mean, I have to be very careful of how I, come across to her. I can never. I have to always agree with her, and I very consciously do that. So
Mm.
she doesn't. She has a tendency of always saying things in a way which downplays the other person and putting herself in a superior place, which I think is
Got
a
it. Yeah.
narcissistic issue. And I think at this point in time, as somebody who's much younger to her, I wouldn't want to kind of break that shell because it is a very
mm,
fragile ego, I would say. You know,
mm, mm,
another thing I want to add is that moon, which rules food and water, correct, and the kitchen,
mm,
or
mm,
and anything to do where cooking is involved. Moon is in the 12th house
mm, mm.
in the sign of Virgo. There are always
Virgo.
fights in the kitchen.
There is what?
Always
Pardon me?
fights, wars that
Fights in the
happen in the
kitchen.
kitchen.
Okay. Okay.
Always fights in the kitchen. And I think that is something that can be seen if there are too many aggressive planets and moon, along with moon in fire signs, or there is
Mm-hmm.
moon in Virgo. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have also seen moon in Virgo sometimes, um, not sometimes, in fact, quite frequently. There is
Mm,
a psychological problem when it comes to the choice of food and the choice of ingredients and who is making the food and how the
mm,
kitchen is maintained, because there is
mm,
it's food, water, and you're putting that into a complex situation, which is a Virgo.
correct.
Food has to be cooked in very peaceful situation, in a very peaceful state. It can never be cooked in aggression or anger or guilt or shame. It has to be cooked with a
Mm,
nice, it has to be cooked when you are happy, so that the people who are eating the food also get that bliss.
mm,
Sometimes we have meals that are cooked with such a warm mindset, and the food may have the least amount of spices, and you feel very full. And sometimes you have the most masaledar khana, or you have the most amazing foods put in front of you, and it's cooked in a very shabby, by very angry people, or they're fighting in the kitchen, or they're throwing utensils here and there, and then you actually feel that vibe when you eat the food.
correct.
You wake up with a headache the next day, you wake up angry the next day, or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So in this person's home life, there is always fights relating to food, even to the extent where there are fights about what dishwashing liquid has to be used. Just such
Mm,
simple
mm,
things.
mm,
So I think these things have to be kept in mind. Of course, there are also problems with the mother, because moon also rules the mother, which I don't want to
mm,
talk about now because I think that's getting a little too personal. And I would say I'll wrap up this chart by just saying that this is a complex chart. It's a very heavy chart. It shows a lot of family dysfunction, right? And a lot of aggression, a lot of hatred towards, not hatred, a lot of aggression towards her near and dear one, but a lot of good behavior towards the outside world, which is something that has to be balanced out, I feel. Because
yeah.
your first duty is towards taking care of your near and dear ones and working things out with them, or disassociating with them completely if they are not very good in nature,
Mm. I
but
think,
that has to be worked out. Yeah,
yeah, and I think because this moon is hemmed between malefics, Sun in the right and Rahu in the left, so
very
the
correct.
moon is in Pap Kartri Yoga,
Very
right?
correct. Very correct. I did not see that. Very right.
Yeah, that is
So
one
let's,
thing.
yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and the second thing that I feel is that whenever a person has Rahu in the first house, the first house is primarily what you're showing about yourself to the world, right?
Mm.
And Rahu is illusion. So the person is always, uh, you know, depicting an illusionary image of himself or herself, not the reality. That's what Rahu is.
Bang on. So I think let's wrap up this chart, right? And I think one
Yeah.
advice if we had to give this chart holder would be definitely be more, be more mature towards your own people who are attached to you, your partner or your children, and be a little bit more forgiving, because you know what? We make mistakes ourselves. There is nobody who's born perfect. Nobody who
Mm,
dies in a perfect state. We all are constantly evolving, and it's very important to keep that in mind when you're judging other people,
correct.
right? So
Right.
let's wind this up and look forward to the next chart soon, right?
Yeah. Great.
Great.
Bye bye.